I first saw it a week ago, last Friday. I was just finishing up the last few rows and was sitting in the cab of the tractor, relaxing, listening to the radio and letting the GPS do the work, when I saw it. Coming down near the middle of the field was a large pink object. It kind of looked like a partially deflated balloon, around 30 to 40 feet across. It was oddly wrinkled and ridgy looking and was shot through with red lines that looked like veins. I kind of thought it might be some kind of crashed weather balloon and decided I would take a look and investigate the thing after I was finished. A half hour later, I manually headed the tractor down a road toward the bulging thing, that was now about half deflated. As I got closer, I could see that the red lines did in fact look like bulgy veins, but also that the thing was completely covered in small red pustules, that were also connected to each other, and the veins, by smaller red veins. I decided to stop the tractor and get out to take a closer look. I jumped down to the ground and approached the thing, noticing as I drew near, that the red pustules, each about the size of a pea, were slightly translucent and squishy, and in the center of each one, was a small dark spot. And there were a lot of them covering the entire surface area of the thing. Thousands. No other features of interest were visible and I still had no idea what to make of it. Not knowing what else to do, I headed for the house and decided I would call the county on Monday morning and tell them about it. Maybe they would know what it was, and what, if anything, to do about it. I had a lot of things to do that weekend and I didn't think about the thing again until Sunday evening, when I decided to get in my truck and drive out to see if it was still there. As I approached it, I could see that it was still only about half collapsed, but also that it was noticeably darker than before. The pustules had turned a dark purple color, and when I got out and inspected them closely, I could see that were now opaque. Feeling one between my fingers, I also noticed that it was becoming hard and plasticky. They were also much larger, each on now nearly the size of a marble. Tomorrow, I would definitely call the county first thing and ask for their guidance. The next morning I called the county and described what happened, but they said it would take a couple of days before they could send someone out to take a look. I told them that was fine, and as I had a lot of work to do, forgot about the whole thing as I worked the fields the next day. For some reason, that night, I had trouble sleeping, and kept waking up all throughout the night. I finally decided that it was the mystery of the floating thing that was keeping me unsettled, and decided that, first thing in the morning I would go and check on it again. I knew something was wrong when I woke up at 6 a.m., like I always do automatically, and looked at the window curtains. Normally, by this time, I should have been starting to see light through them, but oddly, they were still dark. But I had a lot to do and didn't worry about it as I started my preparations for the day. It was when I entered the kitchen to make breakfast, and I saw that the kitchen window was also dark, that I got really alarmed and went to investigate. As I got closer, I was startled to see that the cause of the darkness was that it was covered from the outside, not by a single object, but by a constantly moving sheet of hundreds of insects, a type of which I had never seen before. Each one was about an inch long and they were an iridescent dark blackish purple color. They had many segments, and out of each, came a pair of legs. About midway through the body, was a larger bulbous segment, out of which projected 3 pairs of long wedge-shaped wings. The last segment of the body was elongated and appeared to have some kind of whip or stinger that was nearly a quarter of an inch long. But the head was, of all of this, the strangest looking part. Approximately half an inch around, it was roughly spherical, but vertically arranged about its hemisphere, was a band of eye stalks, each about a quarter of an inch long and ending in a strange-looking spherical compound eye, each about 1/16 of an inch across. The front of the head was a mass of mandibles, each about a half an inch long, radiating outward around a kind of round opening that appeared to be some kind of mouth. I had no idea what to do, but my first instinct was to get the heck out of there. I headed to the hallway and grabbed my keychain that was hanging from a nail next to the front door. Steeling myself, I flung open the front door and made a run for my pickup. Immediately, I was swarmed by insects, and worse still, they bit hard. Brushing them off my face and arms, I jumped into the truck and immediately started swatting and brushing off the ones that managed to get into the cab with me. After doing so, I noticed that my hands were covered in blood, but whether it belonged to the insects or me, I had no idea. Quickly, I started the truck and began driving, but immediately, I noticed a new problem. The insects were so thickly covering the windshield that I could barely see, and once I started moving, the problem became even worse as more of them piled into the glass. I tried using the windshield wipers, but they simply moved out of the way and recovered the glass as quickly as they were cleared. Suddenly, I saw a dark shape and realized I was headed straight for a tree that was near the right side of my driveway, and slammed on the brakes, knocking down a section of fence and barely stopping in time. Now what? I sat in the truck and tried to decide what to do next. Obviously, driving wasn't working, but because I couldn't see. But what if I didn't have to see? Slowly, I put the truck in reverse and turned around, heading back toward the house. This time, I aimed for the larger dark shape next to the house that I knew must be the barn. Once I got there, I parked the truck and took a deep breath, then flung the pickup door open and ran for the barn doors. Frantically, fighting the swarms of biting insects, I found the latch and flung open the doors. Thankfully, there were fewer insects inside the barn and I ran for the tractor, quickly climbing the ladder and jumping into the cab. Once again, I had to swat and brush off the many insects that got into the cab with me, and after doing so, noticed that my hands were completely smeared with blood. This time, there could be no question about the source because my face and arms burned and stung horribly, although whether that was because of something in the insect's bite or because I was covered in some kind of fluid from their smashed bodies that was seeping into my wounds, I had no idea. Thankfully, the tractor was ready to go, as I had refueled it after the last time I had used it, hoping to get an early start on the day. So much for that. I decided to set the GPS for Field 6, the most northeastern field as From there, I could hit the 74 and follow it to Hepner, which was hopefully not being swarmed by alien insects from who knows where. Thankfully, in the tractor, I didn't need to see, I simply rode along as it dutifully used GPS to follow the access roads to Field 6. Once I got to the highway, I headed south, and as I got further from the fields, I began to tell that the swarms of insects were thinning. About halfway there, most of them had dissipated, thankfully. It was getting late in the day, but once I got to town, I headed for the sheriff's office and was able to get one of the deputies to agree to take me back to investigate the farm the next morning. I also called the man from the county and he agreed to meet us there at the same time. Finally, I was able to book a room at the rarely busy Hepner Hotel. Despite the bemused stares of people as I pulled into the parking lot in my tractor, I was glad to finally be able to clean up a bit, although my clothes were still pretty messed up. Not wanting to go anywhere in my state, I had a pizza delivered and killed time until the next day. Some awful horror movie was playing that night on TV that had a house where the outside windows were covered in house flies. Flies. As if that was really terrifying or something. I quickly changed the channel and watched something that didn't involve insects. The next morning, the deputy picked me up at the hotel and we headed back to the farm. As we passed the halfway point, I couldn't help noticing that there were no insects. When we finally got to the farm, I noticed the deputy gave me a look, as there were still none, but at least the county man was there, so together, we searched the house and farm for signs of the insects. None were found, but we did find thousands of dry, dusty, crumbling tubes on the ground, each about an inch long. It was hard to tell what they were, but the county man said he thought they reminded him of the hollow shells left after insects molded, but he had never seen anything that looked like them. Finally, I took both the men out to the field where the thing from the sky had landed, but nothing there remained except for a large whitish patch of what looked like a dissolving paper bag. Both men agreed to make a report of what I had seen anyway, for whatever that was worth. Then the deputy gave me a ride back to the hotel, where got back in the tractor and started the long, slow journey home. It's been 8 years now since I saw the thing from the sky, and nothing like it has ever happened again, nor have I heard of anything remotely similar happening elsewhere. Sometimes, as I till the fields or gather the harvest, I wonder whether the whole thing was a dream-made illusion brought on by too much hard work, or a medical condition of some kind. Maybe it was. But I still have some scars from some of the bites in a few of places on my body, and that, along with my vivid memories of that day, convinces me that it was real. As for the thing from the sky, who knows what it was? I tried asking several insect experts, but I stopped doing that when they responded to me as if I was some kind of raving lunatic. I also did my own research, but that turned up no even vaguely satisfying conclusions. In the end, I guess it was just a thing from the sky, and in the end, maybe it returned to the sky, in a way, maybe to the place it came from, wherever that was. I hope it stays there.